Tonight on News 5 Live, impasse at the western border is resolved. Cargo trucks are finally allowed into Belize to purchase grains and to deliver goods. The PSU meets with PM Barrow to discuss the way forward regarding increments for public officers. Guillermo Foreman, who has been stuck at the northern border after being denied entry into Belize, is taken into police custody. Will he be charged with illegal entry? The LPG war heats up as Zeta Gas says it wants to be allowed to bring in LPG. And an adult whale has turned up dead just outside of Belize City. Details of these stories and more coming up in tonight's newscast.
Smart está totalmente preparado para las demandas de nuestra
Welcome to News 5 Live for Wednesday, May 13th. I am Marlene Cuellar. Tonight, the situation at the western border involving cargo trucks has been resolved, and traffic is now flowing freely. For 2 days and a half, the truck drivers from Guatemala could not enter Belize to purchase grains and other goods, nor could trucks cross to bring goods. Long lines formed at the border, blocking the Guatemalan side of the bridge. This afternoon, an agreement was hammered out, and the trucks have been allowed to pick up cargo at Spanish Lookout, as well as to deliver goods. News 5's Hipólita Novello was at the border today and spoke to all sides of the dispute.
On the Belizean side of the border, the gates remain closed. Soldiers and immigration officers remain posted, and health officials sit silently under this tent. Since Monday and up until this morning, there was no movement in or out, and that was because on the Guatemalan side of the border, this was the scene. A line of cargo trucks stretching almost 3 kilometers from the adjacency zone into Melchor de Mencos was formed. Guatemalan truck drivers blocked the bridge, creating a traffic bottleneck and preventing cargo trucks from crossing the border. The drivers are upset that Belizean authorities decided on a new system. They were told that they would need to remain at the border while a Belizean driver would be purchasing for them. This decision was taken after countries like Mexico and Guatemala recorded a spike in COVID-19 cases. Belize has no positive case, and authorities want to keep it that way. Speaking to News 5 from behind the border gates, this Guatemalan truck driver says that he has been buying corn from local producers for years. And it was not until Monday that they were informed of the new protocols. He says throughout the years, there has been little contact with Belizeans.
Estamos solicitando que se nos permita entrar con nuestros camiones hasta Spanish Lookout, porque las autoridades quieren obligarnos que despeguemos los equipos acá en el corral, en custom, en cargo, y que un camión beliceño lo lleve. Entonces nosotros estamos pidiendo que se nos permita ir nosotros con nuestros vehículos como lo hacíamos siempre, lo hacíamos antes, ¿no? Y comprar nuestro producto y vamos para atrás de regreso.
The sentiments are shared by fellow Guatemalan truck driver Sender Berganza.
Ahora nosotros entramos a Belice solo a comprar.
We enter Belize only to buy. We buy corn in Spanish Lookout for 1 day, 2 days maximum, and we return. It is the same when buy cattle in Shipyard Blue Creek. 1 day, 2 days maximum, and we return. We don't go to do other things in Belize, but to buy and give revenue. Little bit for them, a little bit for us. I know the problem is Belize. We are not making a scandal. What we want is for them to open the border once more so that we can go buy corn, because the Mennonites need for us to buy corn. They need us to buy their corn because they cannot have a lot of corn there because it will go to waste.
Local grain producers invest tens of millions of dollars in their farms, harvesting, in a case of a single producer, more than 10,000 acres of extra corn to be exported to Guatemala. General Manager for Cayo Grain and Agro Supply Limited, Gilbert Canton Jr. says that on a weekly basis, 4 to 5 trucks will be loaded with yellow corn to be exported to Guatemala.
Right now, the price of corn is anywhere from $24 to $25 for a 100-pound bag. So 24 to 25 cents a bag. This is for yellow corn. And so you just come in. If you look, when you drive into our facility, there's a scale. Empty truck weighs in, empty truck weighs out, and then the transfer of money is done before they leave the facility, whether that's a bank transfer or a check or whatever it is that, however it is they're paying, and that's how that's done. We did an assessment of corn available in this area. And between Spanish Lookout, ourselves, and Banana Bank, there's almost 500,000 bags of corn available here. Excess corn, not corn that we need for local demand, so excess corn that has to move to Guatemala.
And it has to be Guatemala because Canton Jr. says there is no other buyer. A partial scored agreement makes it so.
If you take a look at what happened in this industry with yellow corn, that industry has been able to expand because the Ministry of Agriculture was able to negotiate a partial scope agreement with Guatemala, which allows our yellow corn to enter that market. So for example, this facility this entire investment is based on exporting yellow corn to Guatemala. And the Mennonites in Spanish Lookout and other areas have expanded their ability to grow grain or expanded their grain production to export into Guatemala. So it's significant. There's nowhere else for that yellow corn to go.
A new protocol was agreed upon today and cargo trucks were allowed in the country. Guatemalan truck drivers agreed to certain conditions, including that a customs guard will accompany them throughout their journey to purchase grains from local producers.
Not just with this industry, but with other industries, agro-productive industries, we can manage this. We can continue to operate with safety precautions in place for COVID-19. Masks and hand sanitizers and hand washing stations, this can be done. And it's minimal contact. If you look, when a truck enters our facility, it's weighed in. With new protocols, the truck driver can stay in the truck. We can take him over to our loading facility. We can load him. And then he'll come out, check, make sure he's getting the full load he wants to get, and then we'll go back and weigh him out at the weigh station. So we can actually complete the whole process without ever coming within 6 feet of the driver.
Reporting for News 5, Hipólito Novello.
This afternoon, Immigration Minister Beverly Castillo informed News 5 that cargo is moving. After meeting today, a set of protocols was established to allow Guatemalan truck drivers to enter the country and to purchase grains such as corn from Belizean producers. The truckers that bring goods such as cement into Belize are also allowed to proceed to the country. We're told that one of the agreements reached is that a customs guard will accompany truck drivers throughout their journey in the country. The costs are the responsibility of either the importer or exporter. According to Minister Williams, these new procedures are being set in place at the border since both Guatemala and Mexico are recording an increase in COVID-19 cases.
He commented the situation at the western border was clearly in violation of the statutory instrument introduced under the state of emergency because the borders are closed. And so we had a number of Guatemalans entering with the cargo. And of course, with the high level of COVID in Guatemala, it's considered a safety risk, no? And so we decided that we will implement as it was to be implemented and is working at the northern border, where you hit and unhitch. But there are some where there cannot be any unhitching. And so because that cannot happen, and they're insisting that it's only Guatemalans that can drive the truck, then the health authorities, I believe, Baja, Customs, Immigration, Agriculture, El Baja is a part of agriculture, met to discuss the protocols, and one of the protocols is to have a guard take that truck to the area where they will be loading the cargo, but they would have to bear the cost. Either the importer or the exporter, they were able to pays the cost of the guard. And so all of that is in discussion right now, but the protocols have been developed, but in discussion before we formally implement. Of course, it's impacting us because there's a matter of foreign exchange in terms of trade, and we move citrus pulp, corn, molasses, rice, I believe, rice husk, heavy metal, things of that nature that goes through that border. And so even under the state of emergency, the borders were open only for cargo, but under special conditions. And those were the protocols that were developed to ensure safety of the Belizean people.
Belizean representatives in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which included Said Badiguera, met with his Guatemalan counterpart Edgar Aguilar and the mayor of Melchor de Mencos, Amado Llanes, to discuss the standoff at the western border. As we reported, the meeting was fruitful as the impasse between Guatemalan truck drivers and Belizean authorities was resolved. The new protocols were needed since the implementation of the state of emergency regulations and the fact that Guatemala and Mexico are seeing a spike in COVID-19 cases. Mayor Llanes told Guatemalan media, Muni Melchor, that he hopes that the new protocols are because of the pandemic and not for any other reason.
Sí, según tenemos entendido, ojalá que sea para que sea por eso, ¿va? De que no sea por el trabajo que tiene nuestra gente, que están entrando y saliendo. Yo sé de que eso de muchos años atrás vienen trabajando, pues esperamos de que sea lo mejor para nuestros transportistas. Nuestra gente es la que está sufriendo ahorita. Si no se da ningún acuerdo, yo tengo entendido que ellos no dejan pasar ni un vehículo también, a donde llevan para allá lo que es gas propano, combustibles y otros insumos que iban para el lado de Belice, pues ahí sí que la población la que decide.
At the northern border, a Belizean who had been stranded there since last Friday remains in a conundrum tonight. Under the state of emergency, Belizeans are being denied entry, except those in special circumstances. Guillermo Foreman says he traveled from the U.S. and on reaching the northern border, he was denied entry and was sleeping in his car. He made his plea public to the authorities, saying he would willingly go in quarantine. But he is now in police custody pending charges. The question is, however, which offense will he be charged for? News 5's Dwayne Moody has been following the story and has this report.
There's mounting debate over the situation involving Belmopan resident Guillermo Foreman, who has returned to Belize, but because of the emergency powers regulations in place, he was being refused entry into the country. On April 3rd, following an amendment to Statutory Instrument Number 65, Prime Minister Dean Barrow made the pronouncement that all border entry points were closed off, even to Belizeans.
As a consequence, and after obtaining the unanimous support of the National Oversight Committee, the government of Belize has decided that our borders are now to be closed even to Belizeans seeking to enter the country. Except in the case of those that are returning from travel for urgent medical attention or some other emergency purpose, no Belizean currently abroad can return to Belize. This prohibition will, in the first instance, last for the duration of the state of emergency.
It was a bold move taken by the government to prevent the spread of the COVID-19, since at the time the number of cases in the first wave was spiking. Last Friday, Foreman arrived at the Santa Elena border after traveling for days from Texas. He checked out of Mexico and remained near the Chactamal Bridge because he could not legally enter the country.
I have since Friday, and I understand that the border closed, but I've been out here and nobody had a look after me. I don't really get no food. There's food I had in my vehicle where I eat.
5 days later, Foreman is picked up by the police and taken into custody, where, according to Commissioner of Police Chester Williams, he will be swabbed. If tested negative, he will be charged and taken to court. But what offense has he committed?
The Immigration Act says at Section 24 that says that persons shall not enter Belize other than at an approved port or place of entry, and that persons entering by land or air shall present themselves to an immigration officer at their place of arrival. So on the face of it, it would seem that this is what this gentleman did. So it would not necessarily, but then again, this is just my view, doesn't necessarily fall under the definition of illegal entry. My view is that it doesn't meet the it doesn't meet the requirement of illegal entry, because if you are a Belizean citizen, Section 5 of the Constitution says that you are always allowed to enter. So I don't think that any immigration officer has a discretion to refuse you entry, because the Immigration Act is not an act that is for the preservation of defense and public safety. That's not what the Immigration Act talks about. So then we go back to the emergency powers regulations under the statutory instruments. My question is, what offense has been committed under that act? He hasn't, well, it has to be determined whether or not he has entered Belize illegally.
Attorney Gavin Courtney says that the emergency powers regulations as it currently stands at sections 18 and 19, in his opinion, is not clear enough to determine whether in fact any law was broken.
If regulation 19 had said If it had said no Belizean shall enter any port of entry unless that person is returned, then the situation would be clear. He would have committed an act. But it doesn't say that. And if we go to 18, we have to define what is entering Belize illegally. And that, in my view, can only be done with reference to the Immigration Act. The question is whether or not, once a person enters Belize because the borders are closed, are they committing an illegal offense? Because the gentleman, I should say, presented himself at the border for an immigration office, he complied with the law under the Immigration Act. Because the border is closed, whether or not that is an approved port of entry. The difficulty with that is we know that there are exceptions. We know that the border is open for persons who need to come back for medical leave. We know that there have been certain exceptions made in the past month, sort of, for example, for repatriating foreigners. So I don't see the argument holding much water that the border is closed and therefore it is not an approved port of entry. But that's just my view. Whether or not that I think would have to be determined under judicial scrutiny.
The repatriation of Belizeans stuck overseas, be that students or those working in the cruise ship industry and others, is at this time being addressed by the National Oversight Committee and the government. On May 8th, Prime Minister Dean Barrow said that GOB was ironing out the details.
We must prepare for the return of those Belizeans that have been stranded abroad. Thus, we have already activated plans for their repatriation. They will, of course, have to go into quarantine. We wish to begin the process of letting our nationals back in as early as possible. It would clearly be before the mass marketing of satisfactory rapid tests, and that is why we would therefore have to carefully manage the flow of our returnees, since we can't handle the quarantining of excessively large numbers if everybody sought to come back at the same time.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
Another dispute that was bubbling is also being ironed out. The Public Service Union, the Belize National Teachers Union, and the Association of Public Service Senior Managers met with Prime Minister Barrow this morning to discuss the issues of increments and allowances for this fiscal year. The PSU and the Ministry of Finance have remained at loggerheads over wage increases that are due to eligible public officers. The union has stood its ground in rejecting a waiver of increments, and government reacted, threatening to amend the public service regulations. Today, during the virtual discussion, cooler heads prevailed, and the threat to alter salaries for public officers has since been rescinded. While he was circumspect in sharing details of the meeting, First Vice President Dean Flowers told News 5 that a framework is being established and that the sit-down was amicable.
Unfortunately, at this moment, Isani, I wouldn't be able to give a proper synopsis of the meeting other than to confirm with you that, as was scheduled, the joint unions met with the Prime Minister and his team. The specific details of the discussions have not been finalized or placed in writing. They have been finalized, they have simply not been placed in writing. And as it was agreed, we shall wait for those to be put in writing before we make comments on them. I am also certain that at tomorrow's press briefing, the Prime Minister will outline that framework as was agreed upon today with the joint unions. The meeting with the Prime Minister was fruitful. It was extremely amicable and respectful, and we're pleased with the discussions held this morning. Also, I can safely say that we're pleased that at the end of the meeting, we were able to neutralize the threat that was issued to public officers and teachers.
Education Minister Patrick Faber has also weighed in on the matter in respect of teachers and their allowances, as they too are being affected by the fiscal crunch. Faber says that government's requests to waive increments and allowances for public officers and teachers is neither irrational nor unfair, given the existing circumstance. Faber also commented today on the financial situation that has befallen employees of Niche, where revenue has also dried up and there are difficulties in meeting salaries.
The matter of increments in terms of the public service, of course, has been dealt with by the Prime Minister himself. And of course, this matter also has to do with the teachers. And I want to say that I support the Prime Minister's position fully. But it's not only that I support the Prime Minister's position. I believe that a good majority of the teachers themselves support the Prime Minister's position. Here we are in a situation where many in the private sector are losing their jobs. Many in the tourism industry, in fact, in the National Institute of Culture and History, which is a quasi-government body, it receives a subvention from the government, but it also depends on revenue from the archaeological sites and tourist attraction, if you will. There is going to have to be, in fact, there is an ongoing discussion now as to what is going to be the case there, because the only revenue that's coming into Niche right now is from the government subvention, which only pays about 45% of the salary bill per month. So there has to be a very serious discussion there as well. And I'm saying all of that to say that asking for teachers and public servants to forego their increments for a fiscal year is not an unreasonable request. By and large, we work in the public service every day. I work with the public servants every day, and I don't get that impression coming from a good many of the public servants that they're not willing to do what they need to do, this small compromise in order to support the country's effort, where in fact the salaries of all public servants are still being honored by this administration. So I would want to think that the teachers and maybe even the leadership of the BNTU are in that same position to say, my goodness, the government is bending backwards.
Coming up, finally, a price structure for LPG. An LPG dispute has been taking place for some time. Tonight, there is an answer to one of the thorny issues involving prices. Before a release from the Belize Bureau of Standards, Southern Choice Butane Limited held a press conference to reaffirm that it had ran out of its supply of LPG. It is also making a request for government through the Bureau of Standards to allow them to import liquefied petroleum gas into the country. According to the company, it had to shut down its branches countrywide because it was out of butane, and the National Gas Company Limited and the Bureau of Standards have not been able to provide them information on the new price structure and market conditions to ensure that there is uninterrupted supply of LPG to consumers. During a press conference today, representatives of the Zeta Gas told News 5 that the monopoly company, National Gas Company Limited, in which the government has shares, is inexperienced and that there's no clear rules of what the commercialization of butane gas will be like. Import licenses expired at the end of April, but the Southern Choice Butane Limited representative, Ernesto Wu, made an open request today. He wants a new license to import LPG in the country.
The Belize Bureau of Standards, and we have also contacted Dr. Canton to try and find what is the process that we need to go about acquiring the product. According to Dr. Canton, he is waiting on the price structure from the government, and at the same time, the government has not been able to give us the price structure. We have been informed that this new monopoly is supposed to be giving us a better price for the final consumer. In this view, and in the fact that we are out of product and all our branches are currently closed, we are hereby requesting the intervention of the Business Bureau to assist us in acquiring this information. We request the government to allow us to continue to import so that we may supply the 30% of the market that we have been doing for over the past years. We want to continue working for the well-being of all Belizeans. We hope that the government of Belize will give us a new price structure and the market conditions for LPG. If the government is unable to meet those demands, we request immediate approval of importation of LPG into the country.
As we said, late this evening, the Belize Bureau of Standards released the new pricing structure for LPG. According to the release, butane will now retail at a wholesale price of $2.26 per gallon countrywide. In urban areas, it retails at $3.86 per gallon, and in rural areas, it will be sold to consumers at $3.96. Southern Choice Butane Limited is one of 6 former LPG importers whose license has expired. That company supplies 30% of the industry in Belize. Today's Zeta Gas rep, Ernesto Wu, also spoke about the impact that the situation has on its staff across the country and the clients to whom it provides LPG.
Our business philosophy is focused on providing job stability to our collaborators and to provide good working conditions for our employees. At this present time, we directly employ 50 persons and indirectly employ 300, thus benefiting 350 families. We are a solid multinational company. Our operations are supported by the supply terminals located in Guatemala, which is the second largest in the region with a holding capacity of 30 million gallons of LPG, supplying countries in Central America, including Belize. At this present moment, we have that storage capacity and we can provide LPG at a very cheap price.
The commercial operation start date for the National Gas Company was set as May 1st, but it is 13 days past that. So what's been the holdup? Is the NGC not ready to distribute, or are they stalling on purpose, as it's speculated by some quarters of the industry? Well, Managing Director Dr. Gilbert Canton says it is neither. The NGC, according to Canton, has the inventory in country and ready to distribute. He says that it should kick off shortly.
The way the legislation is set up is that 4 days prior to the commercial operations date, we are to have a price that is exercised with the Belize Bureau standards, right, on this first shipment. So the shipment came in, and we have to go to that price that's exercised. And after we have gotten approval on the pricing, which is set up in the legislation, where there's an acquisition cost, a landing cost, and all the pieces that make up the price, the final wholesale price that they're allowed to sell is in the legislation. Then once we have that approved, then subsequent to that, we have the commercial operations date. So I think we've gone through the exercise. I think the CBS is probably going through what we have in our legislation. This takes us to our wholesale price, and we have to go forward in that to the distribution retail aspect of the industry. No? In other words, our price at Pickwick, at the depot, in Goak, at the depot in Belmopan, will be the same price, the price that we deliver to any of the existing players, Better, Fuel, Thumbs, Feeling Up North, Green Gas, different. So global price was in wholesale that people are 10,000 hours of delivery. They get the same price that they have at the depot and at the depots and at the terminal. So we will kind of normalize pricing, wholesale pricing across the whole country. So I think they're trying to work that issue into how they come up with their final retail price to consumers also. I think it's imminent. I think it's going to happen any day now. We are prepared to go ahead and deliver. They do have the inventory after the ship payment successfully at 1.4 million gallons in tanks in Big Creek. And we have the 4 trucks commissioned and ready to run.
Canton says that due to COVID-19, there is about a 40% less demand for LPG in the country. He says at this time they have about 1.4 million gallons of LPG in country, which represents about a month and a half supply. As you just heard, Canton says that the price setting exercise will help to determine the wholesale price for local distributors. That price, up to the time we spoke with Canton this morning, was not released as yet. But he pointed out that globally LPG prices have been increasing. Dr. Canton says that the wholesale price will be the same across the board for the distributors. So how will that factor into retail for consumers?
A lot of people like to talk about cheaper prices and lower prices, and I think that's all very relative. You have to put that into its context, no? We are price takers and not price makers. So basically what the acquisition price is that we get it in the source of country, which in this case the U.S. Gulf Coast, that is where we have to start building our build-up price. Our build-up price is regulated. You know, there's some allegations out there we're not regulated, but we regulate it very, very strong, because although we do not fall under the supplies control act as it's done in our act to the price, and that governs and regulates our operations. You know? So and in that act, and in the schedule for that act, there is a formula of how we arrive at the wholesale pricing and all the inputs and pieces that go into that. So it's very transparent in pricing. But as I said, we are price takers and not price makers. So depending on what the acquisition price, just like in other fuels, like in gasoline, diesel, you know, when a shipment comes in, they have to sit down and do the calculation of the acquisition price, go through the build-up formula, and then come out with a final wholesale price. I can tell you that, you know, prices in butane and LPG has been going up in terms of the source supply. In March of last year, it was down to like 24 cents, and this right now is up about 10.5 cents US above that price in March. So, you know, that's going to have to factor into it also. And the reason for that, a lot of people say, why is LPG prices going up? When petroleum prices are going down, there's zero and some places negative when you take it. But it's because LPG is not really directly associated with petroleum anymore in terms of pricing. And that is because all the LPG comes from the shale, from the U.S. Gulf Coast, comes from the shale production. Shale production in the States has been cut back, so there's not as much being produced as the demand is still there. That drives the prices up. So all the existing players in the industry, whether it's Fuel, Debit, Hamza, Mr. Peter, Mr. Lucas, DNE, whoever it may be, that buy products from NCC, they all get the same price. So there's a level playing field going forward on the distribution and retail side for the people who are in that aspect of the industry. Remember, one of the things that the NGC came in for was to put a stop to the whole thing of using a control over the complete supply chain to kind of to get yourself in a better position in the market, right? And that's what has been happening with the other three companies. Where basically they have complete control over the supply chain. Now with NGC in, we're breaking that chain and we're saying, okay, anybody post the wholesale price of what NGC has will be able to get the same price, and then they can compete out there based on their service and the distribution network and whatever else they want to, whatever else they put together to try to get their market share.
The destruction of several clandestine airstrips across the country is an ongoing exercise being carried out by the Ministry of National Security in light of their usage for the illegal landing of drug planes. While Chief Executive Officer Felix Enriquez did not divulge operational details or specific locations, he told News 5 via phone this evening that the demolition of these makeshift runways are part of a broader effort by government to confront the issue of frequent drug plane landings in the remote reaches of the country.
There's not much more. It is what it is. There are, as you know, several clandestine airstrips all over the country, I believe. As you know, we have limited resources to monitor the landings of the plane and determining where they will land. Still have that challenge, as does all the countries that are around us. And so one of our strategies is to destroy the airstrips that are hard to reach and are likely to be used for illicit activity. So that's what's going on. It's part of a broader strategy to counter illicit activity.
The official cause of death of a 5-month-old baby girl from Bella Vista Village has yet to be determined. A post-mortem examination has not been conducted on the body of Kinsley Jasmine Cowell, and while the parents are alleging that their baby's death is related to a vaccine that she received 4 days prior to her passing, Director of Health Services Dr. Marvin Manzanero told News 5 that the preliminary indications suggest that her death is not related to the vaccine. Dr. Manzanero says that a health team continues to investigate. Baby Cowell was rushed to the Independence Polyclinic on Monday after she began suffering from high fever and respiratory illnesses. After the break, high school students get ready for the CXC exams. High school students across the region, including Belize, will sit the annual CSEC exams at the beginning of July and will now only have a little over 6 weeks to finish preparing for those papers. While there was some concern about the administration of the tests, Minister of Education Patrick Faber says that the issue of teachers and the submission of school-based assessments also came up in light of the countrywide state of emergency.
In short, students will now have just the month of May, remaining days, and also the month of June to prepare and to be back on track. This is why we said all along that these exams were not canceled. We didn't want people to become complacent and not study. And this is why we went to great pains to say, hey, this is still on. We're still negotiating. We're still giving Belize's input. This is now the position, and we want people to prepare and prepare well for the exams come the start of July and going forward.
Students attending the University of Belize, those in the far-flung communities in the Toledo district, will be able to travel to Punta Gorda to access the internet in order to do their courses online. According to the Minister of Education, the issue was raised in Cabinet on Tuesday, and BTL has agreed to provide the infrastructure as well as the necessary bandwidth to accommodate online learning.
UB sought the ministry's support to take to the National Oversight Committee and the Cabinet permission for those students living in the Toledo area where they have a campus. Many of them live in a very remote area, and you're right, they might not have internet access. And just for clarification, the point that I was making was that most tertiary level students are already engaged in digital learning. They already are very, very versed in email. I would say 95% of courses at the tertiary level already entail some kind of digital contact with the students, whether it is email, WhatsApp, Zoom, Moodle, Blackboard, whatever platform they use in at these levels, it's already there. So it's just a matter of getting them connected. So we received permission yesterday from Cabinet to say to UB, those students who live in remote areas will have permission to come to the campus there in Toledo and have access to the broadband so that they can engage to finish their courses. And we're looking to put up hotspots in some of the remote areas in the north even. Once UB has done a survey and they have identified where these areas are, and we're working with Digit to ensure that that kind of availability of broadband is there.
Faber for Party Leader is a campaign slogan that former Deputy Prime Minister Patrick Faber very much intends to revive once the existing COVID-19 threat subsides. Faber told the media this afternoon that his leadership ambition for the United Democratic Party remains alive and that he plans to resume all vote-seeking activities ahead of a leadership convention upon the country returning to a state of normalcy.
I've said from the start of the whole COVID-19 issue that has to take a back burner to everything else. You're right, we are moving towards normal once again, however new that normal is. And all I'll say is that my ambition to be leader of the party has not diminished. My application is still alive and kicking. I have no intention of withdrawing it. And when the time is right, we will revive the campaign full speed.
When we come back, a house collapses with a family of 6 in deep slumber.
In these challenging times, the one thing that is certain is that the Belize Bank
The Smith family of Mahogany Street is homeless tonight. As Elizabeth Smith and her 5 children were in deep slumber on Tuesday night, their house collapsed. Luckily, they were not injured, but it has left them without a roof over their heads. COVID-19 has also left Smith without a job, so tonight she is making a desperate plea for help. Here is News 5's Dwayne Moody with this report.
A family of 6 has been left without a roof over their heads after the wooden structure they called home collapsed beneath them overnight. Just after midnight, Elizabeth Smith and her 5 children between the ages of 6 and 16 were sleeping inside when the house fell off its support beams.
Me and my kids were sleeping and we heard solid crunching and the house was crumbled down with all of us. Yep,
Around
we
what time this
nervous.
happened?
Like leave it after 12 last night when we were sleeping and turning. Yep, and the house was crumbled with all of us. I was so nervous. I was worried about the kids that they're okay and I okay physically and everything, and everybody was okay. Just that my house crumbled and my little one, they kind of nervous because they never used to something like that for that happened to them, no?
Smith is a single mother who worked as a janitor at St. Luke's Methodist School in the St. Martin de Porres area of Belize City. But the COVID-19 crisis has left her without a job for almost 2 months now. She says that they have been living at the house in Mahogany Street for over 3 years. They are now staying at her father's house, located in the same yard.
Thank God I got a father that I could have a little space for a little time, that whosoever really care from their heart to help me and my 5 kids now.
For now, the family is displaced, and Smith is asking for assistance to rebuild their home.
I was begging assistance to help for human development, and they just pushing me around. So, yes, I was.
And this happened.
And this happened now, and I really need a roof over my head for me and my 5 kids now. Right now, like I said, things dread. No savings are there for like rake or scrape to try to build a roof over my head. I'm asking for assistance. If you want to contact me, my number is 603-4198.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
The San Pedro Belize Express Water Taxi made 2 COVID-19 relief donations today. The first donation comprises food packages to almost 50 families in the Majestic Alley neighborhood of the city. The families are getting basic grocery items, including poultry products. The second donation was made to the families who reside in San Pedro. This morning, we stopped in for a brief presentation of the food items in Belize City.
How many families benefiting today?
On the list that they submitted 48 families, and some families included 4 persons, some families included up to 8 persons. So, yeah.
These groceries would last them for approximately how long?
I believe it would last them for at least 2 weeks. The other relief is going to be for San Pedro, and we're going to load up shortly and head over to San Pedro.
How many families will benefit?
We didn't separate them into families. We're just doing the same thing like we did the last time, and just dropping them, and then the person in charge in San Pedro, I believe the town council, would be distributing to families. So it's just bulk items.
Coming up after the break, we'll tell you what researchers have to say about an adult whale found dead in Belize's waters.
In these challenging times, the one thing that is certain is that the Belize Bank Limited is here for you.
A dead whale was discovered this morning in the vicinity of Drowned Key. It's not a usual occurrence to find such a large whale dead in very shallow waters. Local researchers estimate that the whale has been dead not more than a week because it was only moderately decomposed. They also suggest that it may have been swimming in Belize's waters for the last few weeks. What researchers can't say, however, is what caused the death of the whale. Nicole Awil Gomez of Wildlife Conservation Society went out to the site today to help conduct an external examination. She tells us more.
This animal is too large. We're not equipped well enough to open it up. So what we did was do a complete assessment outside to provide enough information to determine the species. So it is a very large whale. It is one of the bigger whales. The length was approximately 18 meters long, and it was a male. But because we're unable to roll it to see all the features, it's a little bit hard to identify, so we take a lot of pictures. We have a couple species we think it is, but it's a baleen whale, which means it's a whale that filter feeds. It doesn't eat fish, or it's not hunting for competing against fish in the sea. What's very interesting is that it was found in quite shallow water. It's found in the Drowned Keys, inside the actual mangroves, which is really peculiar. This type of whale would be in deep waters looking for krill and other plankton to filter feed. And so we don't know why it's here. We didn't get to open it to see stomach contents, to see what might be inside, so we don't know cause of death. But it's very interesting, and I would just like to remind the public, when you see these interesting cases, please share it with the Belize Marine Mammal Stranding Network. When animals start to come into shallow waters, there's something usually already wrong with it. So when we have a big whale enter, so Belize waters has whales. We know we have whales in the deep sea between like Lighthouse, Turneff, outside the Barrier Lagoon. This animal came in. It could have been a problem. It could have been coming in ill. Usually when animals start to come closer to shore in shallow waters, it's about to strand. It's ill. It could be starving. We're asking that people please don't mess with the carcass. We're hoping to later recover the carcass, what's left, the bones. Perhaps it can be something that we can put back together with a taxonomist to have a nice display. This is an interesting find for Belize indeed.
A report will be prepared and circulated in marine and conservation networks with the hopes that it may help to offer additional expert opinion and any possible related findings to provide a more thorough analysis on the whale. And on the topic of marine animals, there is a manatee that needs help somewhere in our waters. Local manatee conservationist Jamal Galvez is asking the public to report any sighting of a manatee that is tangled up in a gill net. The report was made on Tuesday by the Sartaneja Conservation Group. Galvez tells us more.
Currently, it has been sighted since Thursday of last week. They have tried to rescue the manatee but wasn't able to do so, so they seek assistance. We went down yesterday to see if we could have provided some assistance in removing the gill net from the manatee. We observed the manatee with the gill net, but we were unable to actually remove it due to the water condition. The visibility was really poor, and the animal was in very deep water. It wasn't safe for human and wildlife to have tried to catch it, so we decided to leave it be, and we're going to continue to follow it to see if we can remove the net in the immediate future. However, we did lose sighting of the manatee, and we're asking the public to be on the lookout for it. If you spot a manatee jogging around what looks like a gill net or buoys, please report it immediately. It can be very detrimental to the manatee, as it can result in the manatee losing limbs, eventual death, depending on how entangled it is. So this is a very urgent matter. We're asking the public's attention and assistance, and being on the lookout to see if you see the manatee and report it immediately so we can try and adjust the situation. We continue to emphasize and call out the gill net users, both licensed and unlicensed users, to be conscious of the impact this fishing gear causes on our environment, and to adhere to the fisheries regulation in regards to the gimlet. Also, we're begging to the government of Belize and as well as these fishers to try and move to a more sustainable fishing gear, not just for them, for us, but for the Belizean fisheries and our marine heritage as well.
Jamal is asking the public to call him at 615-3838 if you do spot the manatee. Last week we told you about Global Big Day, which was being observed on Saturday. It's a single day out of the year when birders all over the world try to spot as many bird species as they can in a 24-hour period. Despite the state of emergency restrictions, which limit movement across districts and out of your home for leisure activities, close to 100 birders participated in the global event right from their backyards in Belize. Birding expert Ronnie Martinez says that the eBird platform stats record an impressive showing for Belize despite the limitations caused by COVID-19. Martinez tells us more about the 383 species recorded for Belize.
Using the eBird platform, they recorded, let me tell you, for Belize, on Global Big Day, we recorded a total of 383 species. That is a significant number, taking into account that most of these people, most of these participants actually could not go out birding, to national parks and that kind of stuff. This is mostly from people's backyards, from all over the place. This was really special because we had participants from pretty much every single district. I'll just give you a quick breakdown of what the participants accomplished. So Cayo reported 297 different species. Orange Walk reported 221 different species. Belize District, a total of 220. Toledo, 200 species. Corozal, 178. And Stan Creek, 136 different species. From what I've managed to extract from the report so far, we had about 100 people reporting from Belize. That is a number that's significantly higher than previous years. But it shows that really when, now that we're in lockdown, this is a really enjoyable hobby, and people are, they're just discovering this and they're enjoying it. And the fact that a lot of new birders were out there, in their backyards birding, shows that there's also a potential for, for this to grow right here within Belize. But we also put Belize on the map when it comes to birding, because a lot of people also noticed, such a small country, but these people reported 383 species in that one day, well over 500 checklists that we submitted for that day. And we had some really, really good birds. We had people reporting stuff like Jabiru, and this is right from their backyards. We had a really, for us, a rare bird, which is the American avocet. Let me just quickly go through some of these. We had somebody reporting a gray kingbird, but all in all, the effort was massive. I'm very, very happy with the results, but so is everyone who participated, because we were kind of doubting what we could accomplish, being the fact that, you can only bird from your house or just, the very close area. But the results are actually very impressive.
If you are interested in birding and want to connect with fellow birders and local experts, you can join the Belize Birding Network on Facebook. And that's the news. Don't forget that tonight's broadcast is available in both text and streaming video at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at News 5 Live. I'm Marlene Cuellar. Thanks for joining us. And from all of us here at News 5, please remember to wash your hands, keep your social distance, stay home, stay safe. Good night.